So if you go to scratch.mit.edu, you'll get to this page. If you've got an account, you can sign in by all means, but you don't have to. We can just click on create. So when we press create, we get our standard Scratch window opening up, and we're going to close some of the wee tutorials that we have. So we'll close this little window just now. Just leave us with the cat. Now, I hope you've all used Scratch before, and this will be fairly straightforward. So the idea of this code along is for us to leverage some of the additional tools in Scratch to create an online translator. And what we're going the cat to be able to do is we want it to ask us a question like, what word would you like translated, or which phrase would you like translated? We're going to type something in, and it's going to tell us what that is in a different language, and also speak it back to us in that language. So to get started, we'll just use the cat just now, and we'll keep the background plain. We'll change how the character looks later on. But we'll just start with the cat, just to keep things simple. The first thing we want to do is we need to enable a couple of additional services in Scratch. So down at the bottom left, you'll see there's a little purple square that says Add Extension. So when you click on that, you get an option to add various other sets of commands to Scratch. And we want to add two. We want to add text to speech. I'm going to press it again, and translate. So you can see in the left-hand side now, you've got your normal Scratch blocks, but you've also got additional blocks, one for text to speech and one for translate. And we're going to come to these really quite quickly. But first things first, let's get our cat to ask us what word we want translated. So to do this, we're going to go up to the event and say when I'm clicked, so when the sprite is clicked, and we'll make our stage a bit bigger so we can see what's going on here. So when we click on our cat, we want it to do a couple of things. The first thing we're going to get it to do is ask us a question. And if you go to the sensing blocks, you'll get the option that says ask what is your name and wait. I'm going to take that like so, join it together, and instead what's your name, I'm going to say what would you like to translate? And when you press the green flag, you will see the cat asks the question. Oh, so when you click the sprite, the cat asks the question. What would you like to translate? And if I put in a word, hello, nothing will happen. And this is because when we type in an answer to a question like this, it's stored inside a system variable called answer. And you can see that on the left-hand side here. If I check that box, you'll see that the answer appears at the top like a variable. So if I press the cat again, what would I like to translate? When you put the word red in, and if you watch what happens to the answer box, that word goes in there. So that's where the word is stored. Now we'd like to use that word a few more times in our program, so I'm going to put the word into a new variable. So the next thing we're going to need to do is go to variables and say make a variable, and we're going to call this word. And then I'm going to pull our variable command, so set my variable. From the drop-down menu, we will choose word. We're going to set word to whatever the answer is. So I can go back to my answer and sensing and pull that in here. So now you can see I've got answer and word on the screen. And when I press my cat, I'll put another word in like blue, and you'll see that both my answer and my word have the value of blue. That's great, that's perfect. I'm going to uncheck my answer now because I don't need to see it. I just know that it's happening and working. So now we've done this, what we want to do is go and investigate our translation commands, because we want to now translate that word into a different language. So down at the bottom left, you've got a set of commands called translate. And you can pull the first one in that says translate hello into Serbian. When you pull this across and stick it on the stage somewhere, if you double click on this, you will see that it will generate an answer. So hello in Serbian is zdravo. If I change the language to, let's say, a word French, because I know the word for hello in French, if I double click on that, you'll see it's going to translate that into bonjour, which is fabulous. Now, we don't want to only translate a single word in here. We want to translate whatever word we've typed in. So if I've typed in blue or red, we want to translate that word. So to do that, we're going to go to our variables and pull in our word into that oval box there, like so. So now we can translate word to French. So again, the word just now is currently set to blue. If I double click, it should give me the translation from blue from English into French. And there we have it. If I run it again, green flag, if I put hello in, I double click on this, you can see it's translated to bonjour. So I know that's working. So now what we want to do is, now we know the function's working, we want to set whatever translation is into a new variable called translation. So let's make a new variable. We'll call this translation. Press OK. And I will say set my variable. From our drop-down menu, choose translation to the translation of whatever word we've typed in to the language of our choice. And I'm choosing French just now because I kind of know a few words in French. And again, click on the cat and you can watch the variables happening on change on the stage. So we know that the word hello in English is bonjour in French. So we should see the word bonjour appear in the translation variable. So let's click the cat. Let's type in hello again, or any other word that you know. And you don't have to do this in French. You could be doing it in Spanish or whatever language you like. Did that work? Hello. There we go. So you can see that work there. So the word hello is translated to bonjour. Let's try that again. Click. Let's put in red. I know that in French, red should be rouge. So return. And that's working great. Fantastic. So now we have our basic translation program working. You can pause the video anytime you want. So you can maybe pause just now to make sure this is all working. So teachers, if you want to do that, I'll just be quiet for a second. And now you've unpaused and you're back, and you should all have your beautiful sprite script looking like this. Now what we'll do is we'll make sure that our cat now speaks that word back to us. So to speak the word back to us, we're going to go to the text to speech commands now that has been installed. And you'll maybe see there's a few different settings in here, and some of them make loads of sense. So the first thing we want to do is set the language to being French or whatever language you've chosen for your translation. Then we're simply going to take our speak command and pull this down. And instead of speaking hello, we're going to speak, can anyone guess what we're going to speak? It's a variable. We're going to speak the translation. So whatever's being translated. So remember up here it says rouge, we want that to speak out loud. So now let's try it and see if it works. So let's click our cat. What would you like to translate? Let's say good night.
Bonne nuit.
And hopefully you heard that. I said bonne nuit. Let's run that again. Let's click our character. Let's do hello again.
Bonjour.
Let's click it again. How are you?
Comment allez-vous?
That's very exciting, isn't it? So this is our basic translation program. The one thing that I would like to change here, though, is that I would, instead of the words appearing in the boxes at the top, I'd like it if the cat was to give us a little speech bubble with our sentence in there. So to do that, once we've said speak translation, what we'll do is we'll go to the say command, which is in Looks, and I'll say hello for, I'll choose 2 seconds. We'll make it just say, let's just say 4 seconds, so it's a bit longer. And what we want it to say in here is, whatever word you've typed in, if you translate that, that word is now what the translation is. So, how are you translated is comment allez-vous. Okay, so to do that, we're going to use a join command, which you will find in the operators. So the join command says join apple banana. I can pull this across. And what this does, what this command does, is it joins two words together or two bits of text together, and you can use as many of these as you like. So if you can imagine, the first thing we want our character to say is, well, let's find the word that we used, which is stored in variables. So the word, so in this case, my word is how are you? So we want the cat to say, how are you? So another join command. And we'll pop that in here. So how are you? Space translated is space. And go back to our variables and let's find the translation variable and pop that in there. So that little function here says, take whatever values in the variable word, then say translated is, then pop in whatever values in the variable translation. And if we put all that in the say command, it will now speak that back to us. So again, let's run it again. So green flag. What would you like to translate? Let's go for red again, because we know that's rouge. It should say rouge in French and have a sentence that say red translated is rouge, is what it should say.
Rouge.
Brilliant. I'm really happy with that. So that's a really simple translator program that's going to translate whatever word or phrase we put in into a language of our choice and speak it back to us. Now you can change this. Perhaps you're studying Spanish. So if we change from the drop-down menu down to, let's say Dutch actually, set language to Dutch. Then we click our cat. What do you translate? Say hello.
Hallo.
Oh, it's very similar. I didn't realize that. Let's choose a different word. Click. Let's say, how are you? So how are you in English? How do you translate that into Dutch?
Hoe gaat het met je?
There we are. That's very exciting. I hope you're all at this stage and you've got a working model. Now, at this point, you could be totally happy and feel that your project is complete. And if you want to feel complete at this point, that's great. You might want to think about changing perhaps a background, clicking on the background, going to backdrops, and actually, no, you can just go to the background and just let's import, choose a backdrop. I'll just choose one that exists actually. I like this blue sky one. So my background is now changed. If you want to change how the cat looks, that's absolutely fine as well. You can go into the cat costume and then you can change how it looks. I think what I'm going to do though is I'm going to delete this second costume of the cat, but I'm going to copy. So right click and I'm going to duplicate this next one. And then I'm going to use this tool here, the reshape tool. I'm going to reshape the cat's mouth, I think, to make it look like perhaps they're speaking a little bit. So do that, and I might even fill that as a darker color like that. And then I might duplicate that again. And I might then reshape that a little bit too. Now you don't have to do this, you can just use a different one. So I've now got these two costumes of my cat with the mouth opening and closing. So I could add a little animation that kind of makes the mouth look like it's moving. So let's just do that to make it look nice. So back to my code. So at this point, let's have a look. Sprites clicked. What do you want to translate? The word, set translation to this, speak translation. So the speak translation, let's make sure we put our changing how we're looking in there. So we'll go to our looks and I'll choose switch to costume. Let's go to costume 2. I'm going to duplicate that. And I'm going to say switch to costume 3. So I've got my switch to costume 2 and 3. I'm going to put a little wait command in between there. So events, apologies. So wait, that's a little, it's like 0.2 seconds. So switch, have a bit of waiting time between the costume changes. Wait again, 0.2 seconds. And let's get that. Let's find a loop. Let's find in control. Let's say repeat. So we'll pop our repeat loop in and say, let's do that, 3 times and pop those commands in there. Put our say at the bottom. So what that will do is it will make the mouth open and close. And when we're finished, we'll switch back to costume 1. So at the very start, switch to costume 1. Zoom out a little bit. So you don't have to do this. This will just give you an example. I'll make the screen a bit bigger. So I pressed my cat. What would I like to translate? It is cold. Press return.
Het is koud.
No. So again, what's happening there is that because of the order of our instructions, it's speaking that and then it's carrying out these commands. So what we can do is we can unclip this, take our repeat 3 here. We'll stick that to the side. And we'll give this, down a little bit, we'll give this its own name. So we'll say events when I receive. So when I receive, and message 1, let's change that a new message and we'll call that speak. So when I receive speak, it does this. So what we'll do then is after we've set our language to Dutch, we will broadcast our message to speak. So set our language to Dutch, it then broadcasts the message, which will then trigger this script, and that will go off and move the mouth, and then it'll speak out the translation. So let's check that that works. How are, oops, typing correctly. How are you?
Hoe gaat het met je?
So we're getting there. You might play around with some of the timings, but that's getting a little animation for our cat to move its mouth. Again, you don't have to do that, but it's just a little bit of, I suppose, eye candy. I'm going to just make this a bit smaller. I'm going to push this to the side so you can see it on both sides. If you want to do this, teachers, you may want to pause. I make this a bit bigger. But if you want to pause at this point, you could take this a screenshot, and pupils, you could code this. So I'll leave it like that. I'll stop. And now we're all back. Let's move on to doing something a little bit more interesting. Just now, our program only translates from English to the language that we've said. So in this case, it's Dutch. It could be French, it could be Spanish. It would be really nice if we could, on our stage, have the option to choose what language we want to translate things into. So to do this, what we need to do is create a new sprite, paint. Correct. I'm going to just draw a little box like so. I may make the fill of that white. You could be much more creative. There we go. Get some text. Make the text black. And I'm going to put the word French. So if you want a way to draw the flags or go and find pictures of the flags, that's absolutely fine as well. I'm going to put French there. And then I'm going to go to right click on that and duplicate it. And change this one. Let's do Spanish. Make sure you spell it correctly. And right click on that and duplicate it. And let's do German. Okay. So I've now essentially got three new sprites, German, French, and Spanish. What we're going to get our program to do is that when we click on any of these sprites, it changes the language that we're going to get the cat to speak in. So for each of these, let's start with the French one. So on the French sprite, we're going to go to code, and I'm going to say for this, when this sprite is clicked, control variables, make a variable, I'm going to call it language. We're going to say set language to French. And we're going to do exactly the same for the other two. Indeed, what you can do is you can click on that and drag it and copy it onto your sprite if you want. So you get a copy of that. I can never get that to work very well, but it does work. Copy it onto there. Is it doing it? Oh no, it hasn't quite done it. It does work sometimes, but I'll just do it again. It's not a big script. So on our sprite for where am I? I'm on Spanish. I'm going to go to events. When this sprite is clicked, go to my variable. I'm going to use the same variable. I'm going to say set language to, I'm going to type in here Spanish, like so. I'm going to click on here, which is our German one. I'm going to go to events. When this sprite is clicked, go to my variable, set language to German. So now I've got three sprites, one for French, one for Spanish, and one for German. I should probably name my sprites to make them easier to understand. So that's my French sprite. That's my Spanish sprite. And that's my German sprite. So again, teachers, feel free to pause the video. So you're going to be creating new, so paint a new sprite. I just drew a box and put some text in there. And then for each of the sprites, you're going to say, when the sprite is clicked, set language to German, but you need to make the variable called language. You just need to do it once. Once that's done once, you'll never need to do it again. And what will happen now is that when we click one of these buttons, if you watch the language variable, when I click on this, you'll see how the language changes, which isn't going to do anything, but we now need to tell our sprite cat what language it needs to speak. So let's go back and do that. So back to our cat sprite. In here, where we see translate word to Dutch and set language to Dutch, all we need to do is find the language variable on the left-hand side, pull that in to there, and the same for here. So we're going to set the language to whatever we've typed in. So I'm going to press the German, I'm going to press the French button, and we should see that our French, if I press French, you should see that the language changes to French. And when I press the cat, it should then answer in French. So let's click, let's see if this works. So we're on to French, click on the cat. Hello, we know what hello is, bonjour, yes?
Bonjour.
Perfect. Let's move to Spanish. So I click on Spanish. It's changed the name. Click on the cat. Let's do hello in Spanish, which is hola.
Hola.
Brilliant. Okay, so at this point, our main script, all we've done is taken our language variable and popped that in to the language commands where it's got the name of the language. We're just putting in our language variable, and that's going to allow us to change it. So if I make another box, if I do another duplicate for, Finnish or Swedish, as long as I say inside the script for those things to set the language to the language we want, it's all going to work absolutely splendidly. So that is our translator program. You might think about ways you might want to use this in your class. Perhaps you might want to make the interface look nicer. Perhaps instead of having German, French, Spanish, you might want to have the flags. You might want to figure out how those buttons might change color when you click them. Perhaps you could figure out how to do that. One thing I would say is that just now our program only lets us choose a language, then we have to click on the cat. If I wanted to click on the language, then the cat to immediately ask me the question, I could just change things ever so slightly. So by using a broadcast statement and a new message, we can do the following. So on the cat sprite, if I unclip this from when the sprite is clicked, I'm going to take that away and go to my events and say when I receive. When I receive, I'm going to create a new message called Ask a Question. So when I receive Ask a Question, it's going to do this. What I can do now in each of my buttons, once I've set the language, I can then broadcast Ask a Question. So I set the language to French and then I ask a question. I can do the same in Spanish, broadcast Ask a Question, and do the same for German, broadcast Ask a Question. So if I go to full size now, you should see that when I press a button, it will immediately get the cat to ask me what I want translated. So French.
Rouge.
Lovely. One final thing we can do is that our sentence, remember our sentence in our cat says, the word translated is translation. Because we now know the language, we can make our sentence a bit more interesting. So by going to our operators and finding another join block. So join, I'm going to pop that in there. Take this out. So the word translated into space. Let's find my language variable. So translated into language. So word translated into language, another join block. Space is space, then translation in there, and pop that back here. So that's quite a big piece of text. You've got 1, 2, 3, you've got 4 join commands, which is joining variables and words together to form a sentence. So press the green flag one last time, press my French one, and let's do goodbye.
Au revoir.
Lovely. And again, we don't need these variables on the screen anymore, so you can go back to your variables and just uncheck them so they disappear. And all of a sudden, you have a multi-language translator tool that will take any word you type in, translate it into the language you've said, and speak it back to you and give you a sentence. I'd love to see how you get on. Thank you for joining us. I hope you found that useful.